Welcome to this New Nutrition Business podcast. My name is Julian Mellentin, and once again, I'm going to start a podcast by apologising for the huge gap that there's been since we last made one. It feels like I have to apologise every time we make a podcast, and our excuses are the usual ones. The reason it's been 3 months since we last made one was that we were very busy at the end of last year. We do actually have a business to run, and doing podcasts is just a kind of nice thing to do on the side. We got extremely busy, and then we all managed to get sick with lots of nice winter infections. So there's all the excuses behind us. Today, I'm going to talk about how important it is to really keep track over the long term of evolving consumer trends and how unstoppable they can be. So the story I'm telling today is by looking very specifically at the UK breakfast cereal market, which has turned into a catastrophe for some of the big brands involved as changing consumer preferences gather speed. And these are not new preferences. They've been around for 10 or 15 years, but they appear to have reached a tipping point. So why the UK? Well, the breakfast cereal market there is the biggest in Europe. In terms of per capita consumption, the Brits are up about the same level as the United States and countries like Australia. The market's been dominated by two companies for over 40 years, Nestlé's Cereal Partners business and Kellanova, a company which most of you will know better as Kellogg. The breakfast cereal category in Europe in general, but particularly in the UK, has been very slowly declining in volume terms for about 10 to 15 years. Individually, there are challenger brands who have done extremely well, but if you look at the total size of the category, gradually sinking. In 2024, the decline reached its tipping point for the big breakfast cereal companies. One consequence of this change is that Nestlé, for example, has announced the closure of a factory with a loss of over 300 jobs, and heaven knows how many more R&D, marketing, or other office jobs are going as well. So did price increases drive the volume fall? Well, actually, prices increased in every single category last year, but many categories, as we'll see, still got increased volume despite the price increases. Breakfast cereals did not. Hit hardest by this drop in volume were the big brands from Kellanova and Nestlé. Well, you may say to yourself, well, if those big brands were hit hardest, perhaps it was because people were switching away from the big brands to cheaper private label product. And yes, that did take place, but that doesn't explain the total fall in the size of the category. And in an interview in mainstream media, a spokesperson for Nestlé said that the problem was people turning away from breakfast cereal and doing it at an increasing pace. So what are they doing instead of eating breakfast cereals? Well, the biggest winner looks like eggs. Despite massive retail price increases in 2024, bigger than the retail price increases for breakfast cereal, sales of eggs increased by 10% by volume. So just consider that. Big price increases, but people were so motivated by eating eggs, they still bought more of them. Why is that? Well, eggs tick a lot of boxes for health-aware consumers. They're real food. It's a simple, natural source of protein. It's not processed, it's versatile, you can use it in all sorts of ways. And in fact, in 2024, UK sales of eggs exceeded total sales of breakfast cereal for the first time ever. So both categories did around 2.5 billion. So eggs were much lower in size, maybe 15 years ago. Now they've equaled breakfast cereal. In 2025, it will be bigger, and then the gap will just go on getting wider as eggs grow and breakfast cereal continues to decline. So why is that? Why have eggs done so well? Well, it's because consumers, as we highlight in our 10 Key Trends 2025, are increasingly embracing animal protein for its benefits. That trend is now the biggest and most powerful in the business of food and health, and that's true of most countries. It's led by the United States and the Americas. The English-speaking countries are going that way. Northern Europe are strongly influenced by more desire for protein, even in Southern Europe, though it's always, of course, lagging behind. So we flagged up this increasing consumer interest in animal protein as our biggest trend for 2025. It's the single most important driver of strategy and change in the food industry. It has taken about 20 years to get to this point, but it's showing every sign it's going to continue to be more important for the rest of this decade, and we think well into the next. And this shift illustrated in the UK market is not just about eggs for breakfast. Demand for dairy protein is growing more than 20% a year in most countries. So let's take a very specific look at the example of Greek yogurt. Everyone loves Greek yogurt. It's a naturally high-protein dairy food. It's very simple. It has a short ingredient list. And in Europe, we're really fortunate because we can actually get the real Greek yogurt delivered on a truck from Greece. The biggest Greek yogurt brand is called Fage. It's present in the United States as well as in Europe. In the UK alone, in the year in which breakfast cereal sales fell 15%, Fage experienced a 40%, that's right, 40% increase in sales. That, in terms of a branded product, is just phenomenal and unbelievable. So what's the appeal? As I said, Greek yogurt is simple, natural, traditional, short ingredient list, and it's versatile. People can do all sorts of interesting things with it. They can sprinkle granola on top, mix it with oats, nuts, seeds, berries, and anything else that they want to do. Now, the Greek yogurt example I just gave is just the tip of the iceberg. Similar double-digit growth figures are being seen for dairy products with higher protein levels across all of Europe, as well as in the United States and other markets. Breakfast cereal is also losing because of the small but significant number of people who skip breakfast altogether. Though there is an element of intermittent fasting, but I don't want to exaggerate that. It's not a big number. But there is, of course, the fact that, as there's always been, there are people who have to rush off to work in the morning and they basically take breakfast on the go at Starbucks, their local cafe, or maybe skip it altogether. Now, of course, the breakfast cereal category has long had its own problems associated in the consumers' minds with the sugar content. But in fairness to the big cereal companies, they have all been working for 15 years or maybe longer to lower the sugar content of their cereals. This is not always easy to do, but they have been doing it. However, reducing the sugar content just doesn't seem to make a big enough difference to consumers. One of the big brands that fell the most in 2024, and I'll be using this as an example a couple of times, is called Nestlé Shreddies. Its volume alone was down 16%. But this is a brand which has been reducing the sugar content. It's down to just under 5 grams per 40 gram serving. Perhaps the perception has been too well established in consumers' minds over the years that breakfast cereals are, quote, full of sugar, and maybe that perception just isn't going to shift. The big breakfast cereal companies have also done a great job of reducing the sodium and fat levels, which they're under continuous pressure to do from public health people. But when you cut fat and sodium and sugar, you end up with a product which is just really boring compared to alternatives. And sodium reduction is not motivating to any consumer other than a very small percentage of people aged over 60. And it's not really of interest to anyone else. So time spent on that, while it might appeal to the public health experts, is of no interest to consumers. And fat reduction might motivate older consumers, but the young are slowly losing their fear of fat. So again, let's use the example of Nestlé Shreddies, the biggest loser of 2024. Fat content is just 0.7 grams per 40 gram serve. Saturates, barely 0.1 of a gram. There's something for the dietitians to applaud. Unfortunately, that has done nothing to stop Shreddies' sales from falling. And in fact, challenger brands with a much higher fat content that appeal to younger consumers are growing their volume. So let's take an example. There's a company called the Paleo Foods Company, stocked in mainstream retailers. 40 grams of its cereal delivers 20 grams of fat, of which 15 grams are saturates. Its business grew massively in 2024, while good old Nestlé Shreddies fell. And why is that? It's because more fat is aligned with the preferences of Gen Z. Gen Z has already driven huge increase in sales of protein in the UK. Sales of whole milk are up 2%. The big brands have also done a fantastic job over the years talking about their high fiber content. Well, that's important, isn't it? Everyone should have more fiber. It's hard to find a package from Nestlé or Kellogg that doesn't prominently carry the message about it being high in fiber. There's just one little problem, of course, which is saying there's something in high in fiber is not a strong consumer motivation to purchase, other than for a very small group of people, age 60 plus, experiencing the increasing digestive difficulties that go along with the aging process. And you can find fibre messages everywhere, on every breakfast cereal packet, in every aisle that involves grains of some kind: pasta, rice, bread, bakery. It's not a differentiator, and it's not very interesting to most consumers. So yes, they do like to buy things with fibre in them, but as long as it also comes along with other benefits that they rank more highly, such as more protein, less sugar, or more fat, or just tastes fantastic. The brands whose volumes have fallen sharply are also the ones who've done a really good job for 20 years talking about whole grain. Again, on the Nestlé product in particular, it's a really prominent message. But the fact is, it doesn't make much difference to consumers. People recognize it, they know it's a good thing, that it means healthy, but it is not by itself a motivation to purchase. It's a background message that has to go with other things. Again, let's take the example of Nestlé Shreddies. The product is actually 97% whole grain, clearly communicated on the pack. Just like fibre itself, it's boring and it's not motivating to consumers. And the flagging up fibre and whole grain has been of no use whatsoever in arresting the decline of the breakfast cereal category. The brands whose volume have fallen also have really short ingredient lists. They've done a great job over the years communicating they're free from artificial colours and artificial flavours. Nestlé has also done a great job communicating about its commitment to sustainability, to regenerative agriculture, to partnering with farmers. But of course, sustainability has to fit in with all the other decision criteria that humans have in the supermarket, like taste, price, convenience. Do I like the packaging? Will my family eat it? Is it versatile? What are the health benefits? And sustainability, frankly, struggles to get high up that list for more than a tiny percentage of people, maybe 5%. Cereal in the UK has been on the downward slope for a long time. It's not coming back. The big brands will continue to decline. Challenger brands in cereal will continue to grow because they're more aligned with what consumers are looking for. And increasingly, consumers will look to more enjoyable products such as eggs, such as Greek yogurt and every other type of dairy protein that are more aligned with their preferences and wishes. And this change won't just be confined to the UK, because the same consumer trends are at work in most countries. Markets like Australia, for example, which has very high per capita consumption of breakfast cereal. You see cereal companies using almost exactly the same strategies as in Europe and the US. Its market too will sink. Probably the same thing is going to happen at an increasing pace in the US, and I don't mean this year or next year, but over the next 5 years. Now, just to blow our own trumpet for a moment, something we love doing, back in 2015, this is what we told our customers. Quote, "The glory days are over for breakfast cereal. The category won't disappear, but a tipping point has been reached. Tomorrow, breakfast belongs to challenger brands and to the wealth of other foods that are better connected to changing consumer preferences." How were we able to say this 10 years ago? Because we spend all our time really understanding all the forces that drive change in consumer behavior and markets. So to wrap up, this little story, I hope, is a useful illustration of the importance of genuinely keeping on top of trends, not just as a quick snapshot once a year, but as something you do all the time, year after year. It's also an illustration of how important it is to challenge yourself about how you're doing business and what you think consumers are looking for, and also the importance of being honest about how your own business needs to change. Perhaps if people like Nestlé had brought out a few products with a much higher fat content, for example, they might not be in the trouble they're in now. Thank you all for taking time to listen to this podcast. If you would like lots more useful information and entertainment, please head to our website, which is www.new-nutrition.com. And for podcasts, well, I promise we'll be producing another one soon, not in 3 months' time, by which time my sore throat might be fully recovered. Thank you all very much for listening. Thank you for your time. And I hope you have a lovely day.